The air was thick with the suffocating smell of smoke and fear. A young woman, just 26 years old, stumbled down a narrow staircase. Her clothes were scorched, her skin blistered, a horrifying testament to a fire that had just consumed her. This wasn't an accident, this was a crime. As her body, a canvas of unspeakable agony, collapsed on the floor, a single piercing cry echoed through the house, a cry not of pain but of a final, desperate plea for help. A mountain of video evidence existed, a damning collection of clips that seemed to lay bare every ugly detail of this murder. The police had a timeline, a motive, and a victim. They had the killer on video, or so they thought. But just as the case seemed to be a straightforward, open and shut case of cold-blooded murder, a new piece of footage surfaced, a single video from a completely different source that would change everything. Who was this woman, and how did a life so full of promise end in such a brutal public spectacle? This is the story of a murder that seemed straightforward, the evidence right there for all to see. But the truth was something far more complicated. And why, on that day of unimaginable horror, was someone holding a phone, recording every single agonizing moment? To understand how we arrived at this moment, a moment where a woman's last struggle was captured on video, we must retrace the long, tragic path that led her here. We must go back to the beginning. Before the fire, before the screams, and before the horrifying videos, there was just Nikki. She was a loving, caring girl who was born into a simple, middle-class family. Her father, Bhati Singh, was a man of integrity who adored his daughters, and Nikki was the very life of their home. She was an avid learner, a bright spirit, a young woman with a quiet determination to build a life for herself and her family. She had dreams, ambitions that extended far beyond the confines of tradition, dreams of financial independence and a life of respect. On November 10th, 2016, a day meant to be the start of a beautiful new chapter, Nikki entered into a dual wedding ceremony with her older sister Kanchan. They were married to two brothers, Vipin and Rohit Bhati. The wedding was a grand affair, a joyful celebration that cemented the bonds between two families. Nikki's father, a man who believed in doing right by his daughters, gave all he had. As a dowry, he provided the Bhati family with a brand new Scorpio SUV, a Royal Enfield motorcycle, and an array of gold jewelry. To him, these were not just gifts. They were tokens of his love, a testament to the life and happiness he wished for his daughters. What began as joy, however, slowly began to rot from the inside. A shadow fell over the two young brides and their new home. They had entered the marriage hoping for a lifetime of happiness, but what they found was a cage, its bars tightening with each passing day. The demands started almost immediately, whispers at first, then a piercing scream for more. "The Scorpio is not good enough," the family allegedly complained. "We need a luxury car. We need money. We need more." The happy facade of the double wedding soon crumbled, revealing the ugly truth of the home Nikki and Kanchan had entered. What began as joy ended in horror. The requests for more dowry became relentless, a constant gnawing pressure that followed the sisters everywhere. They were tormented, verbally abused, and constantly reminded that they were not enough. The gold and the gifts they had brought with them were derided as cheap clothes and gifts, a painful insult to their father's sacrifice. To escape the crushing weight of their financial dependence, Nikki and Kanchan did something extraordinary. They channeled their entrepreneurial spirit and opened a beauty parlor from their home. It was a small business, but it was theirs. It was a beacon of hope in the suffocating darkness, a way for them to build their own lives, to earn their own money, and to gain some measure of independence. They even used social media, a brave new world for them, to promote their venture, with Nikki herself making viral Instagram reels. But this small taste of freedom enraged their captors. Their husbands and their mother in law allegedly began to take away all their earnings, every single rupee they made every day. They would not let the sisters have their own money. And when the sisters resisted, when they tried to hold on to what was rightfully theirs, the physical violence began. Our husbands would thrash us whenever we tried to keep our own money, Kanchan later recalled, her voice thick with pain. We were not allowed to ask questions in the house. The husbands would go out at night with friends, and if the sisters dared to ask where they had been, their response was a slap. Meanwhile, the marriage had begun to fester with another layer of betrayal. Nikki discovered Vipin's alleged extramarital affairs, a cruel sting on top of the financial and physical abuse. Not only that, he had barged into the parlor several times and started fights with customers in hope to ruin their business. Sadly, he was successful in his efforts and the parlor eventually shut down. Vipin, a man with a history of violence that would later emerge from police records, had his own deep-seated demons. He grew increasingly resentful of Nikki's social media activity and her insistence on reopening their beauty parlor. It was a quiet rebellion, a desire for dignity and autonomy that he could not bear. In the days leading up to the tragedy, the tension was a taut wire, ready to snap. The two sisters had a heated argument with their mother-in-law over a reel they were filming. It was the spark that would ignite a horrifying blaze. Nikki, tired of the abuse, had even tried to escape to her parents' house, but Vipin, using their son as leverage, convinced her to return, only to resume the same cycle of torment. Little did she know this would be her final fatal mistake. The arguments, the beatings, the emotional torture, everything had been building up to this one horrifying crescendo. The final fatal confrontation came on the afternoon of August 21st, 2025. It began with an argument, a bitter row that escalated into a violent attack. According to Kanchan, the sister who lived in the same house, she witnessed a scene of unspeakable cruelty. She says she saw her mother-in-law, Daya, hand a bottle of kerosene to Vipin. Then, with a casual cruelty that belied the gravity of his actions, Vipin allegedly poured the flammable liquid over his wife, Nikki. The screams were immediate and piercing. When Kanchan tried to intervene, she, too, was beaten unconscious, a brutal silencing of the only person who could have helped. When she regained consciousness, the house was a scene of horror. Nikki was on fire, her body engulfed in a terrifying blaze. A shocking, grainy video filmed by Kanchan herself shows a woman, her torso in flames, stumbling down the stairs, falling in front of her helpless son. The horrifying footage captured Nikki's final moments, the very second her life was tragically cut short. Kanchan, with the help of a neighbor, somehow managed to get her badly burned sister to a hospital. She was taken to Fortis Hospital in Greater Noida before being transferred to Delhi's Safdarjung Hospital, but the severe burns were too much. Nikki Bhati was declared dead the same night. But here is where the story takes a chilling twist, one that throws a long, dark shadow of doubt over everything we thought we knew. While her family insists it was a brutal, premeditated murder, there is another version of events. Vipin's cousin Devendra, who claims he took Nikki to the hospital, paints a different picture. He says that in her final moments, Nikki herself told doctors that her burns were the result of a cylinder blast in the kitchen. A hospital memo, the medico-legal report, also records this statement. So what do we believe? A sister's tearful testimony backed by a video of a woman on fire, or a hospital record, a medical document that holds a dying woman's own account of how she was burned? The initial police investigation was a whirlwind of conflicting statements and volatile emotions. Nikki's father, a man broken by the loss of his daughter, publicly demanded the harshest punishment for his in laws, calling them butchers who don't deserve to live. The fear filed based on Kanchan's complaint led to the swift arrest of Vipin and his mother Daya. His father Satvir and brother Rohit went on the run but were later taken into custody, with all four facing charges of murder and conspiracy. They were remanded to 14-day judicial custody as the investigation continued. But as the investigation wore on, it became a battle of narratives. The drama didn't end with the arrests. While in police custody, Vipin allegedly attempted a brazen escape. He reportedly snatched a pistol from a police officer and tried to flee, leading to a police encounter where he was shot in the leg. From his hospital bed, Vipin's words were a cold and shocking echo of his alleged cruelty. "I have no remorse. I haven't killed her. She died on her own," he told a reporter. A man who had just lost his wife, a woman he had been married to for 9 years and with whom he shared a son, showed no sadness, no regret, no remorse at all. His chilling reply, "Husband and wife often have fights. It is very common," further painted a picture of a man who saw violence as a natural part of a marriage. But here is where the story takes a chilling twist, one that throws a long, dark shadow of doubt over everything we thought we knew. As the investigation continued, a new piece of evidence was unearthed that threw the entire case into a tailspin. CCTV footage from a grocery shop located diagonally across from the Bhati family home surfaced. The timestamp on the footage, 5:42 p.m., places a man believed to be Vipin at the shop, standing near a white car with his young son. A few minutes later, at 5:47 p.m., a commotion erupts. The man is seen sprinting towards his house, followed by an older man, and moments later, Vipin emerges from the house and gestures to bystanders. The timings, according to the complaint filed by Kanchan, place Vipin at the shop at the very same time the alleged murder took place. How could Vipin have been outside, at a shop, while inside his wife was being set on fire? Was the video recorded by Kanchan old, as Vipin's family claims? Did she edit and misrepresent old footage to incriminate him? The police themselves were forced to admit that they had to re-examine the entire timeline of events and re-question Kanchan to get to the bottom of the increasingly complicated case. The truth, it seemed, was not as simple as it appeared. An inflammable liquid was found in Nikki's room and sent for forensic testing. The police were joining the dots, but the pieces of this gruesome jigsaw puzzle didn't quite fit. With the accused now in judicial custody, the family of Nikki Bhati has met with officials, pleading for justice. They have requested that the case be heard in a fast-track court, hoping for a swift and decisive end to their nightmare. The outcome of the trial, when it eventually happens, will not only determine the fate of the accused, but will also send a powerful message about justice and accountability in a country where dowry deaths are an all too common tragedy. The trial for this case is yet to start, as it is currently in court. We are following it closely and will keep you updated on this channel. The case of Nikki Bhati stands as a haunting testament to how fragile safety can be, even within the confines of one's own home. This was not just a crime of passion, but a systemic act of oppression, a brutal end to a woman's desperate plea for dignity and autonomy, a cry for the right to financial freedom. Her story became a warning, a horrifying reminder of how deeply dowry has poisoned the roots of society, turning a sacred tradition into a deadly weapon. For in this case, her desire to earn her own money and gain a sense of independence was seen not as a dream, but as a threat, a source of conflict that ultimately led to her death. This story reminds us of the thousands of women who, like Nikki, suffer in silence, their pleas for help dismissed as a common fight between a husband and wife. It is a tragic reminder that a daughter, a sister, never stops being a part of her family just because she is married. A father's responsibility to protect his child, a brother's duty to stand by his sister, these bonds should transcend outdated cultural values and societal expectations. If this story shook you, if it left you with a haunting reminder of how fragile life can be, then don't forget to subscribe to watch similar stories like this.